Today, I want to share how I unintentionally put a stop to my wedding when I read my vows. I met my fiancé in a group setting through our coworkers. One of our mutual friends, David, was my best friend, and it was great to see him getting along with the girl I was dating and later proposed to. My fiancé was thrilled when I asked David to be my best man, and I didn't think much of it at the time. Looking back, I did notice her excitement, but I didn't think to ask why. Fast forward to the week before our wedding, and my soon-to-be wife Bryant was particularly excited and glued to her phone. I assumed it was all related to wedding planning, since she would often pause and ask me to choose between two options. While these decisions were trivial to me, I went along with her choices to keep her happy. In hindsight, I suspect she was fabricating reasons to talk to me so I wouldn't suspect her of communicating with my best man. Interestingly enough, both she and I had our respective bachelor/bachelorette parties on the same night. When my best man called to inform me that he couldn't make it to the bachelor party he had planned for me, I was extremely disappointed. He explained that his mother had been unexpectedly hospitalized, and he needed to be by her side. It was a forgivable situation, and I didn't suspect or doubt his word. Fortunately, I still had a group of friends with me, and we had a great time together that night. We played basketball outside and then got cleaned up and headed to an upscale lounge downtown. I felt like a king, and I hoped my fiancé was feeling just as happy and excited about our upcoming wedding. At that point, my fiancé and I were already living together, and we had made a pact to abstain from sex for a month before the wedding. I had no idea how challenging that would be. Each night, we took turns sleeping on the pull-out bed in the living room. When I arrived home one night, my fiancé was already in bed, looking peaceful and angelic. It was clear she had a fun night out. I gently tucked her in, but as I turned to leave, I noticed something shiny on the floor near the edge of the bed. Curiosity getting the best of me, I picked it up and examined it closely in my hand. To my surprise, the shiny object I picked up was a fancy cufflink. I couldn't help but wonder whose it was. My fiancé didn't own any cufflinks, and the only pair I had didn't look like this one. The thought of another man being in our bedroom made me anxious, and I began impulsively rubbing my face, head, and neck. Just then, my fiancé's phone vibrated on the nightstand, and I could hear it even though she was fast asleep. I stood by her and read her messages, and one particular string caught my attention, the one with my best man. The most recent text was from him, sent 4 hours earlier at 9 p.m. As I scrolled up the message thread, I realized that my fiancé had invited my best man to her bachelorette party, which was unusual. However, what I read further up was even worse. She had told him that the night of her bachelorette party was going to be their night, as the next day she would belong to me. He had asked her if he would ever be able to have her again, to which she responded that if he tempted her enough, he might get away with it. Messages from months prior showed how their conversation had progressed from strictly platonic to flirty. He had started asking about her body, and she had started sending him pictures of herself. They had made plans to hang out on a day when I thought she was at work, and then he messaged her asking if they should have done that. Her response was, "I've never been more sure of anything," just like that. Within an hour, I went from being a blissful man about to be married to a broken-hearted fool plotting revenge. I took 6 screenshots of the worst messages they had sent, obviously escalating in severity. My plan was to read these messages when I was supposed to read my vows. This was going to be terrible. Just like what she had done to me was terrible. I erased all evidence of my investigation and took a sleeping pill to get some rest. The next morning, I woke up to find that my fiancé had already left a handwritten note explaining that she had gone to get her hair and makeup done. The thought of having to stand next to a cheater on my wedding day made me bitter. I no longer missed her or wanted her to apologize. I was ready to end things because I couldn't believe how much she had betrayed my love. She was the only one for me, but I was only one of two for her. I dressed up in my finest attire. My hair was immaculately styled, and I even smelled wonderful. A part of me felt like it was all for naught, but I managed to convince myself that it was worth the effort. Although I contemplated telling my father about my plans, I ultimately decided against it because I didn't want him to dissuade me or inform others. Just then, my closest friend messaged me to inquire if I was en route to the venue. Once I arrived, he was waiting for me outside, dressed to the nines. Although he looked impeccable, the only thing on my mind was whether he had remembered to wear cufflinks. Taking a risk, I feigned knowledge and informed him that he was missing one. Although I couldn't discern it for sure, it was clear that he was taken aback. I noticed his embarrassment and felt a bit awkward myself. He explained that he must have misplaced it while it was caught on something. Curious, I asked to inspect the cufflink he was wearing in case I happened to locate its match. His heart was racing, and he was perspiring profusely at this point. I found his unease amusing but decided to play it cool. As he revealed the cufflink to me, I realized that it was an exact match to the one I had in my pocket at that very moment. I gazed up at him with a grave expression, struggling to contain my urge to scream or strike him for his deceit. He noticed my discomfort and inquired if I was all right. Shaking myself out of my thoughts, I forced a fake smile and reassured him that I was fine. After all, it was my wedding day. I gave him a playful slap on the back, causing him to startle, and strode into the venue. As the tedious mingling and grand procession unfolded, I realized that I never wanted to have a conventional wedding again. The entire affair seemed ridiculous and meaningless. It was at that moment when my soon-to-be wife made her entrance down the aisle. She looked stunning, and all the memories of our journey together came flooding back to me. The situation was incredibly unjust, and I found myself weeping uncontrollably. Those around me seemed to take notice of my unhappiness and tears. I was devastated, struggling to contain my sobs until the celebrant prompted me to recite my vows. This was my chance. As I began reading aloud messages exchanged between my fiancé and James, I cited the precise dates and times of each one. At first, it felt awkward with everyone waiting patiently for me to arrive at the point. However, as I continued to read the flirty messages, it became apparent that neither of them would be proud of their conduct. As I continued to read the explicit messages aloud, the guests in attendance began to squirm uncomfortably, glancing around at one another as all eyes were fixed upon them. My bride grew increasingly agitated, demanding to know what I was doing and what I was reading. After I read another text, she implored me to stop. However, I proceeded to recite the highly inappropriate messages in which James expressed his desire to be inside her again, and my fiancé invited him over because I had left the house. The room erupted into a buzz of hushed conversations, and my fiancé attempted to seize my phone from me. Suddenly, my best man stormed out, followed by 5 of my groomsmen. As my fiancé attempted to snatch my phone from my grasp, I shouted out that I had pictures and videos of their illicit exchanges and offered to show them to anyone interested. This caused a stir, with people quickly rising from their seats and leaving the venue. The celebrant questioned whether we were still going ahead with the wedding, prompting me to let out a loud, sarcastic laugh. My ex was now on her knees, dressed in her white gown, and sobbing uncontrollably at the altar. Her bridesmaids were frozen in place, uncertain of how to respond. Perhaps some of them had already suspected that she was sleeping with James or had witnessed their flirtations. I took great satisfaction in seeing that no one rushed to console her or make her feel better. I stepped outside to check on my best man, only to find his car surrounded by the 5 groomsmen who were yelling and screaming at him for his betrayal. By this point, I was exhausted from all the drama and just wanted to rest. My head was pounding. I felt like I had already gotten the revenge I sought and just needed to take a nap. I asked them to let him go and back off, realizing that keeping him there would not solve anything. They reluctantly stepped back, and as they did, my would-be wife, Bryant, came running out of the venue with her bridesmaids in tow, shunning and condemning her for being a terrible person. She ran behind the car of my best man, with her bridesmaids chasing and calling her a terrible person. After about 10 yards, the best man noticed her in the mirror and stopped. She got in the car, and they drove off. When I turned around, I saw that most of our wedding guests were watching the scene unfold. Many of them came up to me, offering hugs and words of advice. It felt strange, almost like a grief counseling session with a mix of our family and friends. However, my ex-fiancée had lost the support and contact of the people she once relied on and knew so well. They relocated to a new state together, but their cohabitation lasted only a year. Subsequently, my former partner returned to her parents, who were disappointed and disparaging. It was a colossal waste of time. Despite all this, she attempted to solicit another date with me, but I deemed her actions as insane. As for my closest friend, I haven't received any communication, but I'm content with that. I can no longer maintain a friendship with him anyway. Thankfully, my friends and family supported me and discouraged me from losing hope or becoming excessively despondent. Although I haven't started dating again, I've met a wonderful woman I intend to ask out. It's difficult to fathom that someone could accept me for who I am, exclusively. That's because my former partner instilled a seed of uncertainty in me. To combat this insecurity, I prefer to take my time in establishing close relationships with others. I ask them whatever I need to know and share my personal experiences with them so they comprehend my perspective. My reaction was one of amazement. It's rare for individuals to endure such a high degree of stress as you did. I admire your tenacity and courage in collecting and reading the messages aloud at the wedding. I believe it was the most effective method for your ex-partner to learn from her mistake. I'm delighted to hear that you received substantial support on that day and beyond. It's appalling that your best friend and fiancé of all people would betray you in such a manner. However, I found your story to be captivating, especially since their union was short-lived, despite evading criticism together. This must have been an additional source of remorse for them both. At that juncture, they presumably realized that they not only ruined the lives of those they cared for, but also their own. It appears that you possess the ability to progress and move forward. Thank you, for sharing your experience with us. We value you and your unwavering emotional recovery. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.